realized that, the raw food diet is not a panacea out there. And, when there are people like yourself that say you're on a plant-based diet, well, I don't know what you mean by plant-based diet, because you could say I'm on a plant-based diet because 95% of my diet is vegetarian, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds. I decided to follow the example of the long-lived people around the world have the longest living people healthy, and not eat an exclusive 100% vegan diet, because there's never been a community and very few people, if any, around the world that have ever lived a long life who have been on a 100% raw vegan diet. If you did research, John Robbins wrote a book on centenarians that lived around the world and the longest living people, and they all had some fermented animal products in their diet, a very small amount. History shows that the diet that promotes longevity is a diet of mostly raw, ripe, fresh organic fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, with a small amount of cooked food, and mostly vegetables, small amount of fruit or sugar foods, and a small amount of animal products, whether it be fish or fermented dairy or something like that. Today in our country we do the opposite. We eat the majority of our diet cooked food and animal products, and a very small amount of vegetables. Now if somebody is a vegetarian today or raw foodist, most people are eating a lot of fruit and very little vegetables. And this is all backwards than what these proven long-lived people have decided. And I found out that it really is not what we eat that counts. It's, are we utilizing it correctly? So there are many different types of diets out there and different ways of eating. And if somebody can eat an all raw vegan diet and they're meeting their nutritional needs and it's working for them, then that's wonderful. However, I haven't found anyone who's been able to do that long term, who's documented it through the ways I find out how to document if something's working for them. Now, if it's not working, they got to do something else. But if you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, that's the definition of insanity. Now, if animal products works for you, great. If it doesn't, that's great. But we can't just go by how we feel. I felt great on a 100% raw vegan diet, but when I got my blood work checked, my basics were fine, but my hormones weren't fine. And of course, there's other things that determine our health besides food, like our sleep, our stress levels. I travel a lot, and that's not helping my health. So all of these things, you got to look at all of these different things. But from a diet standpoint, especially because most of the food that's grown in the soil today is depleted of nutrients. Many people that limit to where they get their nutrients from are usually deficient. Now, somebody like yourself who goes to great lengths to make sure you get the majority of your food freshly grown, like really freshly grown, like you pick it yourself and you eat it as fresh as possible, there's going to be a lot more nutrients in those fruits and vegetables. But I'd say like 99% of the raw foodists out there don't take that into account. They're just getting food as long as it's labeled raw. And I say we shouldn't call it the raw food diet anymore if we want to look at health, because the raw food diet is not a healthy thing anymore. We should call it the fresh food diet, because that's what health is all about, is eating food fresh. Even if it's cooked and fresh, it's still better than raw and not fresh. And most of the raw food out there on the market today, even the produce you would get from Whole Foods and other health food stores, is not fresh. And it's deficient in enzymes and deficient in nutrients. You lose up to 50% of the enzymes after it's been sitting on the shelf for about a week to 2 weeks. And most of the food in the stores has been traveled halfway around the world, and that's the situation it's in. But when you're doing what John's doing, and you're getting the food out of your own gardens or out of gardens that was freshly picked, then it's something different. And I do believe that's the food we should eat. You can see behind me right here, there's a garden that John helped me put in that I try to get a good amount of my food. And whenever I go, I'm much better off going to the farmer's market than I am to the health food store. Much better off going to the health food store than a regular store. So it's the best you can do is what you want to do, but we have to be realistic. But when you look back at research, and I look at my own personal experience, and the majority of people out there, it does work if you do it the right way. I'm not an advocate of eating the factory farm animals. I'm not an advocate of eating the animal products that you would buy in the basic store, the drugged up milk and everything else. But for centuries, people have been eating fermented goat milk, raw goat milk, and things like that. And it's been very beneficial to the body. So that's the freshest way you're going to get it. Now, if you want to put probiotics in a little bottle and take that, that'll do okay. But raw, fresh goat yogurt is going to be much fresher. So it depends where you're getting the source and how your body's utilizing it. When I got tested, I took an extensive amount of tests, and I tested the hormones, and I tested the nutrients, and I wanted everything to be fine because I felt great on a raw food diet. But when I got those tests and everything didn't come back as well as they should have, I realized I feel great because of stimulation and adrenaline, but it's not working for me because it's not meeting my nutritional requirements. And then I had to do something else, and whether it's supplements, whether it's animal products, whether it's just changing the way you eat a raw diet, again, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same results, so you got to change what you're doing. I monitor my blood, and right now what I'm doing is working for me. If it doesn't work for you, then don't do it. But I can challenge anyone out there. Now, I understand the consciousness of not eating, factory farm animals and things like that, but I challenge anyone out there, including yourself, from a nutritional standpoint. No one can tell me, or I want to find someone that can tell me from a nutritional standpoint, raw goat's milk, sheep's milk, or goat's cheese or sheep cheese, if not overeaten and eaten at the right times, is a very high nutritional food with no negative side effects to it at all from a nutritional standpoint. And animal products out there, same thing. Now, there's some controversy about eating animal products raw versus cooked. I have not eaten animal products raw, animals raw yet. I'm not. That's not something I haven't got into yet. But I know people who have, and they have good information to back up what they do. But even eating cooked animals. Now, I only eat meat very seldomly, and particularly the Bible says once a year to eat it during Passover, so I'll eat meat during Passover. But other than that, I just don't like the taste of meat. Fish, if I do eat it, I prefer it cooked, but I do that very seldom. But what I do more often is some eggs and milk, and I do those raw. But not even often. Maybe, not often at all. The majority of my diet is still a vegetarian-based diet. But I'm not going to call myself a vegetarian because it's not all vegetarian.
All right, thanks, Paul. So let's see, a couple things came up. Let's see, where does the milk, or where does the nutrients in milk come from? Well, most, hopefully, pasture-raised animals are eating grass and other things to make their milk, so we could eat the things that the animals would eat and get our nutrients firsthand instead of secondhand, just like how we, eat meat for protein. Well, the vegetables, have the protein.
Let's break it down one by one here, and you talk about the milk. And I used to believe that as well, what you said. Why get it secondhand through the animal if you can get it right from the nutrients yourself, which the animals eat? And again, we're not talking about factory farm animals. We're not talking about animals that are drugged up. We're talking about, if somebody has their own farm and they're raising grass-fed animals. I used to believe that as well, but when I had a baby, things started to change for me. You see, the two things that changed for me is, number one, in the Bible says, God said, I'm going to take you to the land of milk and honey. And I said, well, why would he give us something that's toxic? And then I realized the toxic milk is the milk that's sold in the store that's been drugged up and altered by man. But fresh milk is not toxic. But the real thing for me was when I had a baby, or when my wife had a baby. I realized my wife was breastfeeding, and breast milk is the best thing for a baby. Now, if a mother out there can't breastfeed for whatever reason, the formula you would buy in a store, which is usually soy-based and sugar-based, is not healthy. But what you would do, or the wise thing to do, would give your baby the next best thing, which would be raw goat milk. Now, it's not wise, and this is what really helped me differentiate on what you just said, is you cannot bring up, and I definitely don't recommend somebody trying to bring up a baby if they can't breastfeed, the mother can't breastfeed, on green juices. There's just not enough nutrients in those green juices for the baby to get everything they need. So there's something missing from the milk of the animal versus green vegetables. And I'm not saying green vegetables don't have a tremendous amount of things, but I'm saying it's not the same nutritional content. And the other thing is, our bodies are not designed the way animals' bodies are, and our digestive tracts and so on. So we can't just take certain grasses and greens and just chew on them and expect to assimilate all those nutrients out of them the way an animal's stomach can, because of the juices the animal has and so on. And when they can, they're making the nutrients more available through their milk that we couldn't assimilate if we chewed it ourselves. So these are just some of the things I thought by eating a little bit amount of the milk and so on would help me get those things I might be missing. Now, if you don't want to take animal products and you want to remain a vegan, well, you can get some vegan synthetic supplements that have been designed with these nutrients that we just can't get from the food ourselves. But again, a lot of the food today is depleted out there, but the animal's body will change that milk and give us some things that we can't necessarily get from the greens, even though they're in the greens, and greens are wonderful food. But when people make claims like the animals in nature, like look how big a horse is and they're vegetarian, or look how big a gorilla is and they're vegetarian. First of all, a gorilla eats a lot of protein through insects and things like that, and worms and things like that, which are the highest protein foods out there, which I don't do, but a gorilla does that, so they're not vegan. And horses, again, animals have different stomachs, cows and horses, than we do, so they can eat hay and grass all day and get nutrients. But I can guarantee that even though it's high nutrient foods, if we try to chew hay and grass all day, even juiced, we might not be able to get all the nutrients that the animals get from it. So the milk from these animals would have certain nutrients that we couldn't get on ourselves.